Hi there, I'm Scotty, a practicing witch and a professional tarot nerd. I'm glad you're here. Today's topic was recommended by my good friend and colleague KT. Thanks, KT. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about candles. Now I won't be getting into candle magic, at least not directly. We're not going to be discussing spell design or color correspondences. I figure maybe I'll talk about those things in a future video. What we'll talk about today, a little bit at any rate, is what happens before we light the candle and what we do when the work is done. Candles, those wonderful little sources of light, have been around for something like 5,000 years. And for much of that time, candles have been a common source for illumination. But these days, though, we don't commonly need candles for light. But they do add a nice touch to romantic dinners, weddings, and religious services, and magic. Why do we use candles in magic anyway? Well, for starters, candles are cool. Figuratively speaking, of course. I'm going to nerd out for a moment just because how candles work is kind of neat to me. When we burn a candle, it's actually wax vapor that's burning. When we light the wick, the solid wax around the wick liquefies and then is pulled up through the wick by capillary action, and then it's vaporized at the hot part of the candle, the burning part at the top. And that liquid wax vapor is converted via a chemical reaction into carbon dioxide, water, light, and heat. The hottest part of a candle flame is about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 1,400 degrees Celsius for our metric friends, and that's pretty hot. Steel melts at around 2,500 degrees, by the way. And that's why it's important to be smart when we use candles, for whatever reason we choose to use them. The National Fire Protection Agency, or the NFPA, publishes a lot of fire safety stuff and writes fire protection code, which has been adopted by lots of cities, at least here in the U.S. On their website, you can find information on candle safety, and there's even a document titled Religious Candle Safety. You'll find a link to that website in the description, but here are some important points. From 2018 to 2022, candles were the second leading cause of bedroom fires, the fifth leading cause of living room fires, and the eighth leading cause of all home structure fire civilian injuries. Candles should be placed in a sturdy candle holder that won't tip over easily. Got a few here as examples. That one's really nice. And we should keep candles at least 1 foot or 30 centimeters away from anything that can burn. Lit candles should never be placed in windows where a blind or curtain could catch fire. Remember that 1 foot distant thing. And we need to light those candles carefully. We want to keep our hair and loose clothing away from the flame. And we don't want to burn a candle all the way down into the holder. We need to put it out before it gets close to the holder or the container. Handheld candles should not be passed from one person to another at any time when they're lit. When lighting one candle from another, light the unlit candle by dipping that candle into the flame of the lit candle. Candles placed on or near tables, altars, or shrines should be watched by a grown-up type. And if a candle must burn continuously, be sure it is enclosed in a glass container and placed in a sink, on a metal tray, or in a deep basin filled with water. Never use a candle if oxygen is used in the home. And have flashlights and battery-powered lighting ready for use during a power outage instead of using candles. Now, if you choose to place your candle in a sink or a bathtub, make sure you're not going to have melted wax going down the drain. Because when that wax cools, you're going to end up with a clog you really would rather not have to deal with. Now, I realize the safety stuff is boring, but I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm happy to be a bit boring if it helps somebody be safe. Accidentally burning your house down isn't very magical at all. But again, why would we use candles in magic? I mean, I don't know about you, but when I have a bunch of candles burning on my working altar, I feel really witchy, and they serve as a signal for me that I'm not fixing to do ordinary things, that I'm about to do some magic. And those candles we use in magic, they light the way for us in our work. They give us a focus for our will and our intention. Christopher Penczak, in his book, The Lighting of Candles, writes, any successful spell requires three things: a clear intention, strong will, and a method of directing energy. Lighting a candle intuitively aligns all three of these things without the user always being consciously aware of these three parts. Focus items are things that help us keep our minds on task when we're doing magical things. Candles can certainly do this for us. But does the candle itself add energy to the work? There is energy produced as the candle burns. We see it as light and feel it as heat, but does this physical energy play a part in our magical work? Well, I think it can if one chooses to tap into that energy during the working. I've seen some candle flames do some pretty unusual things during a working that couldn't be completely explained away with mundane explanations. But in general, I think candles serve primarily as a focus for our minds during the work. One way of looking at the candle itself is as a representation of the four elements of air, earth, fire, and water. Penczak details this view in Lighting of Candles. Roughly speaking, though, he equates the wax with earth, the flame with, fire, duh, the oxygen with air, again, duh, and the liquid wax with water. Personally, I think that liquid wax equals water part is a bit of a stretch, but if we consider them as metaphors and ways to focus, it all works out just fine. There are lots of different kinds of candles out there, and they're made out of different stuff too. The most commonly available candles are made of paraffin wax. Some folks might shy away from paraffin wax because paraffin wax is a byproduct of petroleum distillation as well as the meatpacking industry. I personally don't mind using paraffin wax candles in my magic because I try to exercise a whole buffalo philosophy whenever I can. If you're not familiar with that idea, it goes something like this. When using a resource, it's best to use all of it where possible, wasting nothing. Other sources of wax used in candles are beeswax, soy wax made from soybeans in an industrial process, and palm oil, which has its own environmental concerns. These days, there are many different kinds of candles. I have a few of them here. We have our chime candles. We have some tea lights. We've got tapers. This guy right here is a big old taper candle. Coach candles, like this little blue guy right here. We've got pillars. 7-day candle, this guy right here. You can even use birthday candles. Little guys like that. There's candles which are designed to float on a container of water. There's shaped candles which are either shaped like humans or body parts, skulls. There's double action candles which has colors layered within the candle in a much like this or in pillars like that. And the reversible candles have a color inside a color. And then there are knob candles, which are a series of knobs. And what about other kinds of things that produce light? Can my oil lamp here be used in magic? Before candles, oil lamps were a common way of producing light, and there is some evidence they were used in magical practice. So I guess I could use my oil lamp here, and there are also oil candles. There are also gel candles, which look like they're made of gelatin and often have little scenes displayed inside them. I've never used them in magic myself, but I'm sure somebody could manage it if they really wanted to. I just don't really think of them for that purpose, mostly because they tend to be more expensive, and frankly, I don't like them. What about LED candles? Can we use them in magic? There are a lot of nifty LED candles these days which do a good job of looking like, actual burning candles, and I suppose we could make use of them in magical work, especially if we consider them as a focus only. And even though they aren't combusting wax to make their light, they are consuming fuel, electrical fuel stored in batteries. Some candles, like the glass-encased 7-day candles, come in their own holders, but other types, like chime or taper candles, need a candle holder, and there's lots of candle holders out there too. It's important to choose your candle holders wisely, not just for the magical work, but for safety too. Metal candle holders are preferred because they don't burn, and the candle and holder must both be stable and secure so they don't fall over. I've acquired a lot of candle holders from thrift stores over the years. I don't recommend wooden candle holders, no matter how neat they are. They can burn, or so I've heard. I personally like candle holders with little built-in parts that catch the melted wax, because cleaning up melted wax is a pain in the tail. And there are candle holders which hold more than one candle at a time. I use one of those on my personal altar. I figure holders like that can be used to combine more than one candle idea or purpose in a working. Magical types are nothing if not creative. Okay, so we have all kinds of different candles. Which one do we choose for our magic? Well, it depends. It depends on what you're trying to do with your candle. Right tool for the job, as my granddaddy would say. If we have a quick little spell we want to do and we need the candle to burn all the way down, then chime candles, like this one, are a great bet. They're easier to dress, more on that in a minute, than other small candles, and they don't burn all that long. But for just a quick spell, we can also use tea lights and birthday candles. For work that requires a longer burning candle, we can turn to coach candles or tapers. And if we have work that needs the candle to burn a really long time, or which we're going to do again and again, 7-day candles or pillars are great for the job. These candles are easy to dress and will burn for a really long time. Don't forget to be safe if we're going to leave a candle burning. I have a candle I made as part of my professional tarot practice, and it gets lit for each client and extinguished at the end of the reading. I've been using a candle this way for years now, and it's been a great addition to my divination practice. And what about those shaped candles I mentioned? There are lots of those available, from human form to body parts, and critters, and just about anything else you can imagine. I don't use many of them myself, but they can be useful. There is evidence from history that some of the first magical uses of wax were in the form of anthropomorphic shapes. That's people-shaped, by the way, although the forms probably weren't candles as we would think of them today. So we've decided to do with a little bit of candle magic. We've chosen the candle that we need, gotten us a holder, thought about safety. Look, I want to apologize for wanting you to be safe, okay? It's just not going to happen. But what's our next step? Well, before I go to work, I get dressed, and how I dress depends on the job. I dress differently when I go to my job than when I'm going to go work in the yard. The same is true for our candle friends, too. We can add herbs and oils to our candles, and we can mark them with symbols, sigils, and words. This is often called dressing the candle, while some magical traditions might call this fixing the candle. A common way of dressing candles is with a candle oil. There are lots of oils available commercially, or you can make your own. You can use a general purpose anointing oil, which serves to cleanse and align the candle for your work. Or you can use a specific purpose oil that's, well, specific for your purpose. There are different philosophies and techniques suggested for this. Raymond Buckland in Practical Candle Burning Rituals says, to dress a candle, you anoint it with the oil, rubbing it onto the candle from the center toward the end. So that would be like this. Penzac, on the other hand, describes 3 ways to dress a candle based on your working intention. From the middle out for balance, from the top down for manifestation, and from the bottom up for banishing. The most important part of this process is the practitioner's focus and intent. During the dressing of a candle, we need to be focusing and concentrating on the intention of our work. It's possible to use herbs in our work as well. One method is to roll the oiled candle in the herbs, which will result in the herbs kind of sticking to the outside of the candle. Again, focusing on the work is what's important here. And we can carve things into the candle too. Naturally, this doesn't work with glass encased candles, but works great on chimes, coach candles, tapers, and pillars. Choose the symbols, sigils, or words which will support your work and focus your intent during the carving process. It's harder to do this on little beady candles like birthday candles, but I have faith in you. And naturally, I have my own way of doing things which I've developed over the years. When it comes to dressing candles with oil, I don't often use the middle out method. And when I'm working for an increase on something, I dress the candle up because I'm wanting something to go up, metaphorically speaking, of course. And for decrease or banishing, I dress downward because I'm wanting something to go down. My brain is really simple sometimes. But with a glass 7-day candle, I do something a little bit different. If I'm adding an oil directly to the wax before I light the candle, of course, I rub the oil on in a clockwise motion for increase and a counterclockwise motion for decrease. And when we're adding things to any candle, don't add too much. Too much can make the candle burn too much or not burn at all. And working with glass candles can be a lot of fun. You can sprinkle herbs and oils directly on the unlit candle, or if you're feeling crafty, you can melt some of the wax using a hairdryer or heat gun before sprinkling the herbs and oils in. But again, safety first. If you're not careful, a hairdryer can blow melted wax out of the candle. Messy and maybe a bit burny if you get it on you. And heat guns, well, they get really hot. Really, really, really hot. With a heat gun, you slowly heat the sides of the candle. If you try to heat it from the top, you might actually ignite the candle wick. Trust me, I know this from experience. Now, once you have some of the wax melted, put your herbs and oils in the wax, and they should drop down into that wax on their own. Don't put your fingers in there. And once that candle has cooled again, you can draw your symbols, sigils, and words on the glass. Use a magic marker or a paint pen. Use nifty colors. Be creative. Have fun, but always Be focused on your work. So now we have our candle all dressed up and ready to go to work. What's next? Well, we kind of need to light that candle, right? Is there a right way to light a candle for magic? Well, naturally, there are different thoughts on this. In Advanced Candle Magic by Buckland, he says, it is best not to light candles directly from a match. It is much better to first light a taper and then light the candle from the taper. I don't look at this quite the same way. There are times when I do have a candle lit from which I light other candles, but I don't do this for all my work. Those times tend to be a bit more ritualistic in nature. Usually for my candle magic, I light the candle from a lighter. I can hear some of the protests now how this isn't very witchy. I get it, I really do. But our ancestors were practical people, and I guarantee you that if they had lighters, they'd have used them too. Okay, so we've done our work. And if we're not letting that candle burn all the way down, remember to be safe if we do that. If we're not letting that candle burn all the way down, we have to put it out, right? What's the right way to do this? Well, it depends on who you ask. In Wicca, a guide for the solitary practitioner, Scott Cunningham writes, when you do begin putting the tools away, it's good symbolism to wait to quench the candles until last. Use a snuffer, your fingers, or your white-handled knife. Clean off the wax and soot after each use. Okay, I don't recommend pinching out candle flame with your fingers because fire's hot. Some folks will say that you never blow out a candle used in magic because it's an insult to the fire. I don't think this is so, but I do try to avoid blowing out candles anyway because it's just what I've always done. I use a candle snuffer of some variety in my own practice. All right, now, I'm going to put something in your noggin. If it's a magical insult to blow out a candle, then why do we blow out the candles during our birthday candle magic rituals? Think about it. The tradition of making a wish when blowing out candles on a birthday cake is definitely a magical working. What if we have a candle we used that hasn't been fully consumed in the work? What about any melted wax that was left over? What do we do with all of this? Well, if we need to discard anything, we need to be thoughtful about it. Don't discard wax leftovers out of doors. You can toss it in the trash if you like. After all, we're done with our work and we should be cleaning up after ourselves. But if this idea just doesn't vibe with you, then you might try what I do. I have a container, and in that I will put things that will burn that I can't just toss out into the woods behind the house. And so I'll put the leftovers from magical work into that container, and every so often I take them out and I burn them up together in a safe manner. Make sure that you're paying attention to local laws and fire safety if you do this. Can we reuse candles that weren't consumed completely in a working? Well, I suppose you could if you cleanse it and redress it. I'll admit that I have done this in the past when my budgets were really tight, but I would avoid recycling candles when possible, just to be sure we're not splashing energy from one working into another. There's a lot more to using candles in magic than just light it and boom, magic. But if we approach each part of our work, choosing which kind of candle to use, dressing the candle, lighting it, and putting it out afterwards, if we approach all of these parts of our work with focus, concentration, and a mind towards our goal, then our work can only be improved and enhanced by the effort. Thank you for spending some of your time with me today. If you've enjoyed the time you've spent, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. My name's Skaji. Safe journey.